industries, they just can't enforce it anymore?
It's a good question. With patents on drugs, I mean, there are different issues with other type of patents.
Sure.
Just stick with drug patents. With patent with drugs, the news, most of you probably followed this news a bit, Thailand really had a major breakthrough in taking advantage of actually rules within the WTO that allow them to issue compulsory licenses. What that means is they could tell Pfizer, you still have your patent on, this AIDS drug, or Merck on the heart drug, whatever. They've done this with a number of different drugs. You still have your patent, but you have to license it. Okay, so you have to license it to other people that want to produce it. And in fact, as generics, they'll pay you a fee, and usually it's a nominal fee, like 5% of the price. And then, in effect, the drugs, it's not fully competitive. It's not as though it's a complete generic and anyone who wants it can produce it. But it brings down the price hugely. So Thailand did that with a number of important drugs. They started with 2 AIDS drugs. They did with a heart drug. I think they're up to about 7 or 8 important drugs. Brazil recently did that with an AIDS drug. And there was another developing country, and I'm forgetting which one it was now, that also is either talking about it or has actually done it.
South Africa.
South Africa?
South Africa or India, I think.
Yeah. India, there's some other issues, but yeah, India is a very well-developed generic industry. So anyhow, the concern of the industry is that you're just going to see the developing world just say, yeah, we're just going to issue compulsory licenses. We're not going to pay these high drug prices. And if that happens throughout the developing world, then you're going to have a situation where the drugs that they're trying to sell to people here for $1,000 a prescription will be available in India and Brazil and Malaysia for 10 or 15 bucks a prescription. And the sort of economist comment on that is, well, either those drugs will come here or these people will go there. One or the other. When the price differentials get that large. So I think that is a real problem, and the drug industry is very worried about that. They want the U.S. government to be its enforcer and to crack down on Thailand and the other countries that are going the route of compulsory licenses. But I have to say I'm very pleased by that development. Whether that continues or not, I don't know. But it will pose a very big risk to their ability to sustain patents. Now with copyrights. Yes, this has been a huge problem. The recording industry doesn't really know what to do about it. Their revenues keep falling year by year. They're about 10% below, this is in nominal dollars, what they were a decade ago. And if you adjust for inflation, it's about 30% lower. That's not a very viable track record if you keep going down that path. So they really don't have any good answers for trying to protect their work, and they keep putting up locks, different types of locks, and you get smart people who design software to break the locks. They can prosecute people for it, but as they say, it's usually not a good business practice to arrest your customers. So they're really in a quandary as what to do about that, and the movie industry is just a little bit behind that, and just that the technology is a little further along. But as it becomes easier, and it already is pretty easy to send a movie over the internet, it will become harder and harder to enforce. So I think, just by, the developments of technology, they will have a very, very hard time enforcing copyrights as things go forward, which, again, to my mind, that's a very positive thing, because, we do need to compensate artists. As I say, I come up with a proposal, I don't need to say it's the best proposal, but the point is we can think of other ways to compensate people for doing creative work. We want to see them compensated, so I don't need have a debate scheduled later this fall with someone from the National Writers Union on copyright. And, the point I'm going to try and make is I want to see writers compensated. They work, so they should get compensated. But the point is that copyright is not the best way to do it. And insofar as copyrights turn out not even to be, feasible, we can't enforce them, there's not much to argue over at that point. So we'll see where that goes. I should mention one other example. Linux is making huge headway, and there's a project that keeps getting delayed, but the one laptop per child program, which is an effort to make a cheap laptop available to kids in the developing world. It's supposed to cost like $150 a computer. It runs on a Linux system, and in principle, if that works as at least the designer intends it to, he wants to have aid organizations and foundations contribute to buy laptops for poor kids in Rwanda and Cambodia and other developing countries. You'll have hundreds of millions of people that are using Linux-based computers. I don't think that looks very good for the future of Windows. So I think copyright does face problems simply because it is getting harder and harder to enforce.
I think we're going to take one more question, and I think Dean's going to be able to sign some books if you guys want them. And
I was wondering, do you think we can bring back the manufacturing jobs, and how would we do that?
Well, I think we will bring back manufacturing jobs basically because we can't sustain the trade deficit we have. And the mechanism may not be pretty. The dollar will fall. That's basically the story. The dollar is what equilibrates trade. We began a high dollar policy in the Clinton administration. Could be bipartisan on this one. We began a high dollar policy in the Clinton administration. Largely maintained it through Bush. And that's caused our trade deficit to go through the roof. And obviously it's primarily manufactured goods. Now, at some point, and we may be seeing this already, the dollar will start to fall. The big actor here, of course, is China, but it's not China alone. It's other developing countries also. Presumably at some point they will allow their currencies to rise against the dollar, and that will lead to return of manufacturing jobs to the U.S.
So what would be policy of the market mechanism?
Well, you could push it with policy. I mean, I think it's unfortunate that we haven't, but again, you know, we can't sustain the deficits we've been running, so the market will eventually correct it. But, you know, I would rather have pushed it through policy, but the failure of policy for a long enough period of time leads you to a market correction, which might, as I say, not be very pretty.
Do you think those currency changes are inevitable?
Yeah, just a question of time.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. If we give a round of applause.